Part 1, Heir of the Survivor. 1 year has passed since the fall of the final empire. The Ska people plus Terrismen have been freed, and Elend now holds the crown. Although loosely, for Strathventure, Elend's own father has marched an army of 50,000 plus to overthrow Luthadel, take the crown for himself, and most importantly, have control over the Lord Ruler's horde of Atium. Or at least that's what he hopes. Unbeknownst to him, Kelsier's old crew, who now look toward Elend for guidance, have not been able to find the stash of Atium. Elend created the laws of this new Luthadel and has formed an assembly which grants power to the people instead of all the power going to the king. This same assembly has him worried that they will want to surrender the city to the overwhelming army right outside their gates. Vin acts as a personal protector of the king, her love, Elend. Whilst patrolling the streets and meeting up with Orcir, the Kandra, under contract to her now, currently disguised as a human servant of hers, is attacked by a barrage of steel-pushed coins. She is able to dispatch all 8 of the Allomancers, but not without some assistance from the Watcher, a mysterious Mistborn who has taken an odd fascination to Vin. Also not before her Kandra's body gets broken beyond repair. Vin forbids him from taking a body from anyone else she has just killed. Vin also used up her last bead of Atium during that fight. Elend begins work on a proposal that will prevent the assembly from doing anything rash before he has a chance to meet with his father. Vin, patrolling, senses allomantic pulses that seem to come from a mysterious figure made up of mist. Vin and Elend discuss everything, and Hammond informs them that the Allomancers Vin dispatched were sent by Ashweather Set, a king from the Western Dominance. Sazed in the Eastern Dominance is now on a holy path to share his wealth of knowledge and religions with the freed Ska people, and stumbles across an odd phenomenon in the mists, which have been appearing during the day and mysteriously killing folk at random. Back in Luthadel, Vin is ambushed by members of the Church of the Survivor, who view her as the Lady Heir to Kelsier the Survivor himself. They worship her and wish for blessings and guidance, but she fears the implications of being a messiah and dodges them every chance she can. Vin escapes them and manages to get Orcir a new body in the form of a massive wolfhound, which disgusts him. She also receives a package of duralumin from Tyrion, a metallurgist she was having uncover the proper alloy of aluminum. Vin spars with Hammond while the others, Spook, Elend, and Clubs, discuss rumors spreading that confirm the Atium cache in Luthadel, which they know isn't true. Vin manages to win the match. Marsh tracks down Sazed and persuades him to accompany him to the Conventicle of Saren, which is a recently abandoned stronghold of the Steel Ministry. On the way, Marsh convinces Sazed to return to Luthadel once they are done, and assist Vin and the others, for there is still more work to do, and the world is far from safe despite the fall of the Empire. Vin, patrolling with Orcir, stumbles upon the function of duralumin, whilst pursuing the Watcher. Duralumin, when burned with another metal, will enhance the strength of that metal astronomically, but at the cost of that metal burning out instantly. The Watcher takes this opportunity to speak with Vin and verifies that he is her enemy, and his insanity is displayed for her, as well as his disapproval of her being a lapdog to Elend Venture. Elend presents his proposal to the assembly and it passes, so Elend is now destined for a reunion with his father. Vin points out a suspicious Terris woman who had been eyeing Elend during the meeting. A messenger then arrives and informs them that a second army has joined the siege outside their walls. The army is Ashweather Set's, and Breeze can be seen fleeing said army toward Luthadel pursued. Vin launches herself from the wall and makes swift work of the pursuers using duralumin. Breeze reveals he is the reason Set is here, for 2 armies allow for the people under siege to be in an advantageous bargaining position. It's also revealed that he was the one spreading rumors of the Atium cache being in Luthadel. 2 sets of bones are then discovered, one being left over from Orcir when he was transferred to the dog's body, and the other is a mystery, but it's suspected that it's an enemy Kandra that has infiltrated Elend's inner circle. So any one of them could now be an imposter spy. Part 2. Ghosts in the Mists. Sazed and Marsh arrive at the conventicle of Saren, where Sazed finds a steel engraving which he takes a charcoal rubbing of. The engraving was written by Quan, a Terrisman who first proclaimed Elendil to be the hero of ages before realizing he needed to stop Elendil from reaching the Well of Ascension. The Well of Ascension holds an immense power which can be used to change the world. Sazed was not able to read all the engraving before taking the rubbing because Marsh interrupted him, hurrying him along. Marsh and Sazed separate, but both intend to head to Luthadel. Vin politely interrogates Orsir about Kandra and discovers it may be possible to find an imposter by using Allomancy on them or getting them in a scenario where they should be using Allomancy. For Kandra are not affected by, nor can they use Allomancy. Vin once again senses the pulsing and confronts the Mist Spirit, which grabs her and causes a reaction within her from her ear to her mind, which makes her even more worried about the mists and their odd changes. Elend decides to try to put the two armies against each other rather than side with one in an effort to stop them from having to give up Luthadel. The mysterious Terris woman Vin pointed out earlier is revealed to be a keeper and feruchemist and was caught spying and is brought before Elend. She reveals herself to be Tindwyl, an acquaintance of Sazed who asked her to assist Elend in the art of being regal and commanding, in which Elend greatly lacks. Despite being king, no one seems to really respect his position, ideas, or trust him to keep them safe. He reluctantly accepts her counsel, and she starts by altering his appearance to better fit a militaristic king. 8 days after leaving the conventicle, Sazed passes through the village Urbane, where he sees what looks like the aftermath of a plague. Apparently, the day mists killed villagers, and the ones that survived, too terrified, hid, and many died from dehydration and starvation. Vin begins researching Elendil's logbook, looking for references to the mists or the Mist Spirit to try to understand what is happening. A messenger from Strathventure arrives, and it turns out to be none other than the Watcher, who is named Zane. Zane reveals that Strath wishes to meet with Elend at his camp. Later that night, Vin Allomancy spars with Zane, who tells her that she does not fit with being a noble's pet, and that Mistborn belong in the mists to follow their own path, not serving under anyone else. Vin begins to wonder if she can turn Zane away from Strath. We see from Zane's perspective and discover that he is Elend's half-brother, both sons to Strathventure, who enjoys many mistresses not just for pleasure, but to create his own personal army of Allomancers, and with luck, Mistborn like Zane. Zane, as mentioned, is insane and hears a voice in his head which he refers to as God. God often torments Zane with pleas to kill everyone around him. Zane informs Strath that Vin is beginning to trust him and that he does not believe they have access to the mythical Atium stash. A servant girl also attempts to poison Strath with tea during this exchange. Strath assumes it was Zane attempting to kill him, who does know of the assassination attempt, but told the servant girl it likely wouldn't succeed. Strath acts as if he is immune to this poison to show power in front of Zane, but as soon as he is alone, he sends for his ex-mistress, Amaranta, who is much too old for betting, being in her mid-20s, but is still very useful at making antidotes to various poisons. Sazed, on his journey toward Luthadel, runs into a Koloss army, which are these great brutish beasts who are incredibly dumb but make up for it in their strength. He is caught spying on them and is taken before their leader, Yastes Lakal, Elend's old friend, and is tasked with delivering Elend a message that he is willing to assist with overtaking the two armies laying siege as long as Yastes gets the Atium. Elend ignores the Assembly's request to discuss an influx of counterfeit coins. Orianne, Set's daughter, arrives seeking asylum in Luthadel and asks after Breeze, of whom she promptly hugs and has an obvious infatuation with the man. Elend allows Orianne to stay, thinking at the very least it could give him some leverage, plus the girl seemed earnest. Vin worries about her changing circumstances with Elend and her predicament being out of Atium, and questions Hammond on possible ways to defeat an Atium using Mistborn without having any. Vin continues checking off potential Kandra suspects off her list, and has a heart-to-heart with Orsir, who is slowly starting to become fond of his master. Their moment is interrupted when it is revealed Sazed has returned to Luthadel. Sazed informs everyone of the Koloss army on its way and of his growing concerns regarding the mists. He informs them that he will be staying to investigate the odd phenomenon, and is chastised by Tindwyl for abandoning his teachings to the Ska people. Vin stands guard outside Elend's chambers and senses the allomantic pulsing similar to what was written about in Elendi's logbook. But in the logbook, it was sensed close to the Terrace Mountains. This pulsing felt closer. Zane finds her and asks her what she would do if she was free to do anything. She reveals that she would simply kill the army leaders and be done with all of this. Zane proposes freeing themselves from their duties and leaving it all behind. Tindwyl requests Vin join Olrianne in spook dress shopping for her upcoming meeting between Elend and Strathventure. She reluctantly agrees and is caught off guard when she is ambushed by the Church of Survivors yet again. This time she attempts to ease their fears. Elend and Vin meet with Straff, who despite Elend's many strategies to persuade Staff to attack Set's army, refuses. Eventually Straff simply decides to kill Elend, but Elend rebuttals by saying that if he does so, Vin will destroy him. Straff dismisses this idle threat until Vin, outside, uses Duralumin with emotional allomancy to strike pure terror in him, at her overwhelming power. Zane, outside, plays on Vin's insecurities, saying how he told her Elend would use her as a murderous tool to fit his needs. Vin tries to ignore this, but it does bother her, and Elend's boasting about using her as a weapon later amplifies these feelings. Straff commands Zane to kill Vin at any cost and gives him full use of his small misting army he was able to reproduce. Upon returning to Luthadel, Elend is informed that the Assembly held a vote of no confidence to relinquish Elend from being king. Part 3. King. Tindwyl pokes at Elend for making such a stupid law that would allow him to be deposed. It is advised that he invokes martial law and stops this from happening, but Elend, being an honorable man, wants to fight it legally, also pointing out that it's quite the coincidence that this happens right when Set's army shows up, insinuating that this is just another tactic to take control of the city. Sazed transcribes and analyzes the rubbing he took from the Conventicle of Saren and is joined by Vin, who asks after the deepness, which is referenced in the logbook, and the rubbing. Vin proclaims that she believes the deepness is the mists and that they are returning, made obvious by all of the odd things happening with them. She also reveals that she is experiencing a lot of similarities with the previous Hero of Ages. Between the pulsing and the mysterious mist figure that's following her, Sazed deflates her enthusiasm a bit but doesn't disagree. Elend meets with the Assembly and tells them of his meeting with Straff. They then begin to nominate candidates for king. Elend is nominated along with Penrod, and for an unexpected twist, so is Lord Set, who turns out to be among the onlookers. Set promises to protect the city should they instate him. He is allowed to formally enter the city with 1,000 men from his army as a royal guard. Elend agrees to parley with Set in 1 week's time. Orseer reveals to Vin of the Kandra religion, which claims humans will destroy themselves for they are created from ruin, while the Kandra are of preservation. Vin continues her imposter chase and becomes fairly certain it's Damu, the soldier Kelsier had manipulated in the caves to rally more faith in his slave army. Vin becomes aware of a poisoned water supply and informs Elend, who already had taken care of it. Feeling left out and caught up in her insecurities, she hears Reen's voice, her long-dead brother, telling her to leave Elend. Vin is baited by Zane into a more serious encounter in which Zane begins burning atium and is able to confirm Vin doesn't have any. He tells Vin that his father wishes him to kill her and that he is Elend's half-brother. He pleads that she go away with him, mentioning how the Koloss army is almost here before departing. Elend and Vin meet with Set, but the meeting amounts to nothing aside from empty threats and the revelation to Set that the atium hasn't been found, that the rumors he heard were purposely spread by Breeze. Vin follows Damu and discovers he is very likely not the Kandra, for he is a member of the Church of the Survivor and has been preaching to the Ska, saying how Vin will restore the world, bringing back the green plants and yellow sun, and also to help the vote to get Elend reinstated as king. Sazed and Tindwyl bond over their studies, and a sort of non-sexual romance buds between the two, and Sazed asks Tindwyl to stay and help him. At the assembly vote, Elend is attacked. Luckily, Vin is able to kill all of the attackers with the help of Orsir, but is seriously injured and goes unconscious at the end. Elend witnesses her gruesome massacre, and she sees the look of horror on his face, piling onto her growing insecurities. They safely judge that the attack was likely a last-ditch effort from Straff. The vote reconvenes and it looks like Elend is going to be reinstated until 2 members are allowed to switch their vote once they realize Set isn't going to win. Elend, being the honorable man, informs them that they can do so even though he could have just claimed ignorance and remained king. So, Penrod ultimately wins the vote with Elend relinquishing his crown. Part 4. Knives. Straff is furious over Zane's failure to kill Elend, Set, and Vin, along with the death of his missing children. Penrod meets with Straff and is given assurances for him turning the city over to Straff. Straff, still cautious of Vin, is reluctant to move into the city right away. Zane reveals he poisoned Straff. Amaranta once again produces him a concoction, and Straff decides Zane needs to be put down. Vin wakes up and Elend accidentally flinches when she touches him, remembering the massacre she caused. She once again hears Reen's voice confirming her fears. Elend apologizes and informs her Penrod is now king. Vin then wakes up to Zane, who lies, saying the assassins were Set's doing so as to not afflict her opinion of him, and also that Straff made a deal with Penrod to secure the city, which is true. He leaves, giving her a bead of atium to further positively influence her opinion of him. Orsir visits her and she thanks him for risking his life in the contract for her. He accepts this but downplays it, saying there was little chance that him attacking a man would directly cause the man's death, thus breaking his contract of not killing humans. He reveals how the Kandra were created by the Lord Ruler and that he could control them. Vin then becomes curious and uses a Duralumin-fueled push on Orsir, which causes him great pain. He asks her never to do that again, and chastises himself for revealing too much about his kind. Sazed and Tindwyl debate the engraving, and Tindwyl is baffled by its contradictions, for it says Quan sent Rashik, a selfish man, to stop and if need be kill Alendi, an honorable man, fearing that Alendi would take the power from the Well of Ascension for himself, despite being honorable. Elend, deposed with little to lose, leaves the city through a pass wall to infiltrate the Koloss camp, but not before being told that an Inquisitor has been seen inside the city. Elend is taken to Yasties Lakal, and after failing to have convinced his once friend to back down, stabs him, and uses him as a hostage to escape the encampment. On his way out, he kills a lesser Koloss and learns what is inside their mysterious pouches: counterfeit coins. Yasties has been bribing the Koloss into submission with fake currency, with the Koloss being too naive to notice. Vin learns of Elend's recklessness, feeling disconnected from him, and so agrees to go with Zane to enact revenge. Zane claims that Demu is also in league with Set and that they are all responsible for the attempt on Elend's life. Vin has doubts, particularly on Demu being involved, but goes anyway. At nightfall, Vin and Zane slaughter their way through Set's men, and just before killing Set and his son Niorden, Vin has a change of heart, realizing they have no Mistborn among them. Set reveals to her that he sent all of his Allomancers after her the first night he arrived, confirming that Zane was lying about him being behind the recent assassination attempt at the Assembly vote. Zane angrily claims she is still under his control and leaves. Set's army withdraws from the city, and the crew is baffled as to why Vin attacked Set without consulting them. They speculate that Straff could also withdraw and let the Koloss take the city for him. Orsir leads Elend to Vin, who is huddled up in an old lair of caimans in a state of depression. Vin reveals to Elend how her mother slaughtered her baby sister and forcefully gifted Vin her earring. She also insists that she must leave Luthadel and travel north toward the Well of Ascension, what Vin believes to be the source of the thumping noise haunting her. Sazed and Tindwyl discover the bottom corner of all of their transcripts of the engraving have been mysteriously removed. Unsure of why, they are interrupted by Vin, who asks Sazed for advice on love, whether she loves Elend and if she should instead love someone more like her. like Zane. Sazed eases her fears, and right after she leaves is interrupted by Elend asking similar advice. In that moment, Sazed realizes these two are meant for each other, and he decides to make sure that they are far from Luthadel before it falls. Sazed holds a meeting in secret with Kelsior's old crew minus Vin, Elend, Spook, Tindwyl, and Allrianne. The crew conspires for a way to get those five out of the city. Zane awakens thanks to a paid alarm service and kills his almost assassin. He confronts Straff, who obviously sent the assassin, and urges Straff to withdraw, let the Koloss do the work, and not to worry about Vin, for she would be leaving with him. Straff, confused why Zane didn't just kill him, asks after it, and Zane responds that a man shouldn't have to kill his own father, and leaves, bearing his mist cloak, thinking about the metal spike embedded in his chest. Zane goes to Vin and almost convinces her to leave with him, stopped only after realizing that Elend trusts her completely. She values this love and trust in one another and decides to stay. Zane, enraged, attacks her. She commands Orcere to give her the atium she had hidden within his body. Orcere then disobeys and apologizes, instead going to Zane, who refers to the Kandra as TenSoon. Realization envelops her. TenSoon was the spy who had killed and swapped with his fellow Kandra Orcere just before he could take the dog's body. The fight continues, leaning in Zane's favor. TenSoon hints to Vin about taking control of him, implying permission. Vin, burning Duralumin and bronze, pushes and gains control of TenSoon, allowing herself to grab the atium, which burns up within mere seconds, revealing itself to be yet another of Zane's lies. The atium was coated around lead, containing almost no atium whatsoever. Vin, without atium once again, faces off against Zane, who had been burning atium this whole time. She clears her mind completely and feigns her attack mid-swing, changing its direction, creating a false image for Zane, who quickly went to avoid her initial strike, but instead took her knife to the neck from her late feint. Zane, dying, thinks of how Vin was special because God had never asked him to kill her like everyone else. God replies saying of course he didn't ask him to kill her, and that he was never insane at all, implying that God was not a figment of his subconscious created from insanity, but an actual being subtly manipulating him this whole time. TenSoon reveals to Vin that he must return to the Kandra, for he has no contract with Zane dead, and that he must face punishment for his betrayals towards his people and their security from revealing too much of their weaknesses to Vin. Vin, saddened by the Kandra's departure, is still greatly injured from the breast stab wound during the fight with Zane, and so heads to find Elend. She confesses to Elend that she had just killed his brother. Elend, bewildered, seeks Sazed for help in mending Vin's wound, and Vin, bare-chested for she's currently being mended, asks Elend to marry her. He agrees, and Sazed marries them on the spot, and taking advantage of their enlightened mood, convinces them to go north and seek the Well of Ascension, and to request aid from the Terracemen, downplaying the actual danger Luthadel is in. The newlyweds agree to the plan. Part 5. Snow and Ash. In the morning, Elend, Vin, Spook, and Allrianne leave Luthadel, with Tindwyl choosing to stay behind, but gives Elend a package to give to the Terrace people. During their horseback escape, Vin uses Allomancy to aid them, and Allrianne splits from them with a different destination in mind. Straff awakens ill and asks for Amaranta, but notices she isn't making the concoction correctly, and seeing markings realizes she was Zane's scorned lover. She reveals Zane never poisoned him, and what he's actually feeling is withdrawals from the lethal drug she's been addicting him to. Straff, in a fit of rage, strangles Amaranta and creates his own random concoction to take and goes unconscious. Allrianne reaches her father Set and pleads to him to return to Luthadel. Straff awakens from his 3-day coma and orders his troops to withdraw, willing to trust in Zane's plan. Sazed and the crew prepare for the inevitable Koloss invasion, Sazed filling his metal mines with Dockson handling the military preparations under Lord Penrod. Sazed and Tindwyl reunite and have a touching moment before having to separate to help guard and command the defense of different city gates. Vin sees the Mist Spirit hovering around a sleeping Elend and attacks it, but it dissipates. Spook, who now constantly burns tin, notices 5 men following them, and they turn out to be Yasties and a few of his soldiers who ran away when the Koloss went into a fit of rage after the carts of counterfeit coins caught fire. Elend justly executes Yasties for bringing the Koloss to Luthadel and then abandoning them. Spook, guilt-ridden, reveals that Sazed tricked them all into leaving in order to spare their lives. After hearing this, Vin confirms her feelings about the Well of Ascension's actual location being in Luthadel all along, because ever since they left, the thumpings have sounded more distant, as if they were getting further away from it. They decide to return to Luthadel, and Vin Pewter runs as far as she can before having to manipulate various metal horseshoes to fast travel the rest of the way with pushes. The Koloss break through Zinc Gate and cut down clubs, with Breeze, who had been using Allomancy to keep morale high, cowers into a building to hide. The Koloss begin pillaging the city and breach Keep Venture, killing Dockson in the process. Sazed takes command of his gate after things start to go south, using his metal mines to fight back against the Koloss and reseal his gate. Word reaches him that Tindwyl's gate has fallen. He worries for her, but continues the defense of his own gate. A group of Skaw onlookers watch the admirable resistance, claiming they are waiting for the Lady Heir to save them with unwavering faith. Sazed's metal mines deplete and he is about to be slain when Vin, proving the Skaw correct, makes a timely appearance from the sky and saves him, taking over the fight and commanding him to withdraw. Sazed and the remainder of the crew head toward Keep Hastings. Vin relentlessly slaughters an impressive amount of Koloss before beginning to run out of metals. In her desperation, she uses a Duralumin-fueled push to take control of a group of Koloss, confirming her suspicions that the Lord Ruler built the same weakness into them as he had with the Kandra. Vin, with her Koloss bodyguards, regroups with the crew at Keep Hastings and convinces Penrod and his small army to assist in stabilizing the city and to send any Koloss her way so she can take control of them, and Sazed departs in search of Tindwyl and eventually finds her frozen body, confirming his worst fear. He forsakes religion from that moment on, realizing that he doesn't believe in any of them. Straff wakes up in the morning after the Koloss attack, planning to invade the city now that things have settled down, but to his utter confusion, a line of Koloss begins charging his army, and Vin, from a Duralumin-fueled steel push, plummets towards him, slicing him and his horse in two upon landing. Orianne, seeing this resistance, forces Set and his army into assisting by herself, leading a reckless solo charge towards the battle. So in order to protect her, Set has to charge as well. Sazed, bearing witness from a safe distance, begins to see Vin as the hero of ages. The conflict ends quickly and Vin forces Gnarl, the recently promoted officer from Straff's army, along with Set and Penrod, into pledging fealty to Elend Venture as Emperor upon his eventual arrival. Vin then leaves to sleep, leaving Sazed in command in her stead. Part 6. Words in Steel. Elend encounters the Mist Spirit, which points north, but disappears when Spook arrives. They accompany a group of Terrace people on their way back to Luthadel, who apparently are survivors from an attack on Terrace by a group of Inquisitors. Vin awakens from her slumber and tells Sazed that the Well of Ascension is in Creedic Shaw, that the Lord Ruler changed the geography in order to hide its location and keep an eye on it for when the power was restored to the well. She also confesses that when fighting him, she was able to draw upon the mists. Elend and Spook finally return to Luthadel, and Vin informs Elend that he is now Emperor. He accepts his new role despite Vin having to take it by force. Vin leads Elend, Spook, and Hammond towards the well, following the thumpings, which are now strong enough to pinpoint a direction. Vin speculates it's because the power has fully returned to the well. Vin leads them into Creedic Shaw, and Elend notes that the mists seem to be pulling away from Vin, Vin uses duralumin to open up an overlooked hidden passageway. Inside, they expect to find the Lord Ruler's stash of atium, but instead they find a cache containing a metal engraved map with Statlan City circled. Sazed has been looking over his and Tindwyl's research and is noticing her point regarding things contradicting. He also finds one of the mysterious ripped page pieces from earlier that reads, "Elendil must not reach the Well of Ascension, for he must not be allowed to take the power for himself." The Mist Spirit appears in front of Sazed and begins directing Sazed towards Vin in the well. Sazed, now in full doubt about what Vin should do with the power should she find it, follows the Mist Spirit in order to talk things through with her. On the way, he passes a Ska being killed by the Mists, to which the Spirit denies involvement. Upon reaching Kredik Shaw, he is stopped by Marsh, who says how Sazed should not have come and that he wishes he knew why he had to kill him. And then he attacks, launching Sazed against the wall, and the fight continues with Sazed becoming fatally injured, but Marsh unknowingly pushed a pouch of Sazed's metal mines into him, embedding them into his body. Sazed is able to draw upon them and for a time is able to heal and turn the tides in his favor. Sadly, he runs out of power but is saved by Hammond, who cracks Marsh's skull from behind. They leave Marsh's body behind in order to pursue Vin. Elend and Vin arrive at the Well of Ascension, a glowing white pool of liquid. Around the pool they find a pottery disc with a bead of metal inside it and a bunch more discarded broken ones. The Mist Spirit shows up and proceeds to stab Elend, mortally wounding him. As he lay dying, Vin draws upon the power and pain flares her earlobe, causing her to remove her earring. At first she intended to take the power for herself in order to heal Elend, but then an aged voice speaks to her saying how she should not take the power for herself and that it needed it to defeat the deepness, the killings by the mists, and that she couldn't stop it by herself. It was then that she remembered Sazed's words about love, and she realized that saving Elend at the cost of the world isn't what he would want, and so, following his wishes, she releases the power, knowing that in doing so, she is sacrificing the one she loved more than anything. And upon giving up the power, she heard the voice proclaim, "I am free!" Upon hearing this, she realized she made a grave mistake, but she was too worried about Elend to dwell upon it. The Mist Spirit then hurriedly begins urging Vin to have Elend swallow the mysterious metal inside the disc, and upon doing so, Elend burned pewter and began healing his wound, now a Mistborn. Vin realizes the Mist Spirit only stabbed Elend in order to force her to take the power for herself in order to save him and prevent the Thing from being released. Sazed returns to the Conventicle of Saren and compares his rubbing to the original metal engraving, realizing he should have paid more attention to the warning that only things engraved in metal are safe. For the rubbing and the etching did not match, with entire paragraphs changed to fit the Thing's argument. The last line, the same one the Mist Spirit kept ripping off of Sazed and Tindwyl's notes, was also altered. His rubbing read, "Elendil must not reach the Well of Ascension, for he must not be allowed to take the power for himself," while the original etching read, "For he must not be allowed to release the Thing imprisoned there." The etching goes on to explain how the Thing is devious and has been altering religions, prophecies, and the things people believe, in order to free itself from its prison by manipulating someone to give up the power at the well. After finishing, Sazed gave up on what little faith he had left. Vin and Elend stand atop the wall of Luthadel, and Vin confesses that she made a huge mistake in releasing that evil thing from the well, that she is perhaps even worse than the Lord Ruler. Elend comforts her and assures her that they will do what Kelsier taught them, that they are going to survive.